Hey guys, Tim here from Tim's Turf Talk, bringing you another video full of useful information geared towards homeowners that are interested in taking care of Bermuda turf themselves. I've collected a lot of information over the years, so we've created this video collection for you guys to help you guys work through the process. I've learned quite a bit over the years, so I hope you enjoy the content. I look forward to it, and we'll see you guys in a minute. So hey guys, let's get started. Video number 1 out of 5. The next 4 videos will be about post-emergent weed control, proper irrigation, proper mowing, and proper feeding. But this particular topic for this video is going to be about pre-emergent weed control. Now, what exactly is pre-emergent weed control? Well, simply put, it's preventing weeds from growing in your turf in the first place. There's a lot of products out there on the market that are great, some that are better, some that are not. So I don't want to get into the topics of which product is better for a specific region or a turf grass. I just want to have a general conversation about pre-emergent weed control, something that a homeowner can use to make a decision on which product they would like to use to satisfy their own needs. The product I use will be linked below, but it's not an endorsement, it's not a recommendation, it's just what I have found to be successful in my situation. So pre-emergent is a chemical that is put on your turf every 90 days. Most manufacturers recommend a 90-day rotation. Some may be more, some may be less. So I recommend when you make a product selection to check the label to determine how often you'll be doing your applications. Now, when you're doing the applications isn't as important as how often you're doing the applications. You can do them every 90 days starting today. You could do them every 90 days starting next month, as long as it's basically every 90 days. I try to do mine in the late season, late winter, late spring, late summer, late fall, but that's what works out well for me, I guess. So make sure that you need a 90-day rotation on your manufacturer's label, and there'll be some more information that you need on that label as well that we'll talk about in another section here in this video. But for now, we just need to know if it's every 90 days. Then you can make yourself a calendar, and then you can just set your reminder, and then off you go, having no weeds in your turf. So let's talk about the products that you're probably going to find while you're doing a search. And most of them are going to be stored in a dry form. A lot of manufacturers will use the acronym WDG, Wettable Dispersible Granule, meaning it's stored dried, you add it to a liquid, typically water, and then it's sprayed with a backpack sprayer over the turf. It puts a nice barrier down every 90 days, prevents the weeds from growing. A lot of these products are very expensive in the initial investment, but when you break it down per application, you're actually spending very, very few dollars to apply this to your turf. Companies will come in and charge you $45, $50, $60, I don't know, I'm just guessing. I don't use them to do weed control in your turf, when you can do it yourself at a fraction of the cost. So in this hypothetical situation, this product that I use is typically about $60 for 5 pounds of product. And I think in my situation, I use just a few ounces of product every 90 days to control the weeds. So I've got years and years and years of product sitting on my shelves that I just simply use when I need to. So there's an investment up front, but in the long term, you'll end up saving some money. So now that you've looked across the internet and you've made a decision and you've checked out my recommendation, that I said I wasn't going to make a recommendation, but I kind of did anyways. Now that you know what product you're going to use, let's talk about how to calculate how much you actually need in your particular situation. So let's take a break, I'll get a whiteboard, and we'll do some math and help you guys crunch some numbers so you know exactly what you need to deal with on a 90-day rotation. Okay guys, so here we are in front of the whiteboard, getting ready to do some calculations here to help you figure out how much pre-emergent you're going to need to apply to your turf every 90 days. So here, at this point, you're going to need to make a product selection. I know there's a lot of products out there on the market, so we're going to use the product that I use in this example. That way we have real numbers to crunch. My product that I use has an annual maximum of 0.8 ounces. 0.8 ounces. 0.8 ounces. So let's talk about maximums for just a minute, because I know a lot of you out there are going to say, whoa, you don't need to use the maximum every single time. Well, you're absolutely correct. I recommend using the maximum dosage in the beginning to get your weeds under control, and then as that weed bloom starts to die down, tailor this back a little bit towards a more medium level. But for the beginning, that 0.8 ounces is what my manufacturer label says is the maximum that I'm allowed to apply per year per 1,000 square feet. So now we have quite a few different variables here, and we need to break this down to a simple base number that we can build our equation off of. So we need to figure that number out. 0.8 ounces annually, and I'm going to do 4 applications per year. Obviously, if you divide that by 4, you're going to get 0.2 ounces every time we apply the pre-emergent per 1,000 square feet. My turf is not exactly 1,000 square feet. I'm in the 3,000 square foot range. You're probably bigger. Some of you are probably smaller. So now we need to figure out the number of units that we need to cover the entire turf. Quite a few videos out there on YouTube on how to calculate the amount of square footage that you have. I do mine automatically in my head because I've done it so many times. I know that 3,000 divided by the 1,000 is 3. Pretty simple math there. If you've got 5,500 square feet, divide that by 1,000, you would have 5.5 as your number of units. So my example, 3,000 square feet divided by the base of 1,000 square feet equals 3. Most manufacturers base their product application rates on 1,000 square feet. Makes it very common across the board. So check the label to make sure it's based on 1,000 square feet, and then simply divide the number of square feet that you have by 1,000 to get the number of units that you have. So now we have our two numbers here. We have 0.2 ounces every single time we apply per 1,000 square feet, and we know we need 3 dosages to cover my entire turf. Those numbers multiplied together, 0.6 ounces of pre-emergent every 90 days. Okay, so let's talk about the financial aspect of pre-emergent weed control. Like I mentioned earlier, you can save yourself a substantial amount of money by applying this product yourself. So let's talk about the actual factual numbers here. The product that I use, linked below, is typically found somewhere between $60 and $70 on the internet. $60. In that container, there's 5 pounds of product. 5 pounds, 16 ounces in a pound. I actually get 80 ounces of product. 80 ounces. Now, in my particular situation, I know we calculated the maximum earlier, and as you can see, the 0.6 ounces is my maximum. Actually, don't quite apply the maximum anymore. I'm actually down closer to the ½ ounce per application range. So if I'm applying ½ of an ounce every single time, and I have 80 ounces, I actually get a grand total of 160 dosages. 160 dosages divided by 4, since I'm doing 4 dosages per year, gives me 40 years of pre-emergent. 40 years for $60. That basically breaks down to $1.50 per year. A little over 10 cents, 12 cents per month that I'm spending on pre-emergent weed control. So there is a big financial savings here by doing it yourself. So the next time one of those turf management companies knocks on your door and says, hey, we've got a great offer for you, if it's going to cost you more than $1.50 a year, you're paying too much for pre-emergent weed control. Okay, so now we're back from doing some math on the whiteboard, and hopefully you guys have a pretty good understanding of what you need to do every 90 days as far as the amount of chemical that needs to be applied. There's a whole nother topic about how to actually get this product dispersed into your yard through a backpack sprayer, and how to actually calibrate a backpack sprayer, because that is a very important task. And there are lots of videos on YouTube right now that can teach you how to calibrate your backpack sprayer. So until I get one of my videos up, I would recommend checking out somebody else's videos. Get your backpack sprayer calibrated properly, so when you apply your pre-emergent every 90 days, you're getting good even coverage and you're dispersing exactly what you need to disperse. So now we've talked about products that you're going to see and how to calculate it, and you've checked another reference to calibrate your backpack sprayer, let's talk about why weed control is so important. Now, aesthetically speaking, yeah, I mean, having a nice clean looking turf without weeds is pretty important to the eye, but it also affects your financial budget for your turf maintenance. How? What do you mean it affects my budget? Well, right now it's February here in North Carolina. The turf outside is very, very dormant, and I'm actually doing an experiment. Part of my yard I've sprayed the Pre-Emergent every 90 days, and part of my yard I have not. So let's go outside and talk about what it is that's going on out here. Alright guys, so here we are in the front yard, and like I said when we were inside, you can see behind me I've got quite a few weeds growing in this front part of the yard here. I've not applied Pre-Emergent here for a very specific reason, which is basically this video here. I wanted to show you how quickly things can get out of hand. Now I'll show you the other side here in just a moment where there's not any weeds. And here we are in the side yard, and you can see no weeds. Big difference. Now let's get back inside and talk about how I'm spending money on the front yard and not as much on the side yard. Okay, so now we're back inside. I showed you what my front yard looks like where I've not done pre-emergent weed control, and I showed you my side yard where I have done the pre-emergent weed control. There's quite a big difference, and like I mentioned earlier, it actually affects the bottom line of my yearly maintenance budget to skip the weed control portion of it. Now I know it seems a little counterintuitive that me not using a product somehow costs me more money in the long run, but it actually does, because as I mentioned earlier, the pre-emergent products are very, very cheap per dosage when you do the calculations like we did earlier. And fertilizer doesn't scale like that. Fertilizer is actually quite expensive. Really good quality products are quite expensive. And post-emergent weed control, which we'll talk about in the next video, is also very, very expensive. You're talking $100 initial investment compared to $60. So there is a financial impact for skipping the pre-emergent weed control, and you will end up spending more in the long run. So that's why I thought we would start with video number 1 of pre-emergent weed control, because I think it is a really important topic. And I think if you were to start doing your pre-emergent weed control, you would see noticeable difference in your turf very, very quickly, and you would be overall happier with the way your turf looks. So now that we've talked about pre-emergent weed control, we'll move on to video number 2 in just a minute, which is post-emergent weed control, which is basically my front yard at this point in time. We've got weeds growing, we've got weeds using up all the nutrients in my soil, so now how do we treat them and get them out of there safely without hurting the turf? Thanks for your time today, and remember that your grass can be greener.